welcome to Roxy's rambling adventures through history. We're going to learn all about different history, but today we're going to focus on Ohio history. I bet you didn't know that Ohio has thousands of years of history that you're literally like walking on every day, and we're going to learn a little bit about it today. Before Europeans came to Ohio, or even America, there were many Native American cultures here that flourished. There are about 3 cultural time periods that are classified by traditional artifacts, such as pottery and mounds. Yes, there were large mounds everywhere around here. I know when you look out in a farm field, you might not think that there were large mounds here, but there was lots of them. Over 10,000 mounds are built right here in Ohio, and over 1,000 of them still exist. Some of them are not as easy to get to, but some of them are actually state parks and national parks, and you can go visit them. One of these specific cultures is the Hopewell Culture that extended throughout the Midwest and Northeast from about 100 BC to about 500. Their culture group built the Newark earthworks, and here are some examples of the mounds that they built. And some examples of their pottery. As you can tell, there's some differences later on that we'll talk about when it comes to the other cultures. The Adena culture lived in Ohio from about 800 BC to about 100 CE. During the Woodland period, they created pottery and had an extensive trade network. Here are some examples of the arrowheads and clay pipes that they found around Ohio. As you can tell, this looks a lot different than the other kinds. And this is just one type of arrowhead. There's literally thousands of different types of arrowheads that were created from different types of material and from different types of flint. All different cool colors. And if you go dig around your backyard, you can find some of those. As you can see, there's many differences between the styles, materials, and what was depicted on these artifacts. And by looking at these differences and categorizing them, that's how archaeologists label cultures that have no written record. The differences could mean that they're completely different groups, or perhaps there's just generational differences. So if you were like to dig around 1,000 years from now in your neighborhood, and maybe your grandparents down the street have a radio that they listen to, and you have your iPhone in your house that you're making TikTok videos on or watching maybe this video on, someone digging around might find the iPhone and the radio and think that there are whole different cultures and from different areas altogether, where in reality they're just a couple generations apart and have learned new technologies and do things just a little bit differently. But it's hard to tell without written record and doing DNA testing to know if any of these groups are related. But as you're looking around at the artifacts, if you want to go Google some yourself, you can kind of see if you can spot the differences and maybe try to guess as to why they were different. The third cultural group is the Fort Ancient Culture, which is part of the Mississippian culture group that existed in Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana from around 1000 CE to 1650 CE. CE is Common Era, so that's just the time period that we're living in now and not BC. They were an agricultural society growing maize, aka corn, in case you didn't know. Maybe that's why we have corn mazes. This culture died out from either warfare by fighting with one another or with contact with Europeans. Maybe there is fighting going on there, or from disease brought over by the Spanish. Many diseases like smallpox and a few others were never present in America before Europeans came over. Some of them came over on the ship and they were sick and they spread disease. And sometimes when people are very sick and fighting wars, they don't have time to make a lot of these cultural things that they had been. So these groups of people still existed, and later on, some people believe that the Fort Ancient Culture is the the culture that the Shawnee descended from. So these people still existed and kind of just turned into other cultures as time went on. It's just, unfortunately, with those things going on, they didn't have as much time to do things like the mound building that was going on everywhere, because you need a lot of people to do that. And mound building was a really big thing, but I'll tell you all about mound building in my next episode. It's a lot to dig into. By the time European settlers arrived here in Ohio, because first they settled along the coast, and then after the Revolutionary War, a lot of people started coming into the Ohio Territory and wanted to farm and do other things. But when they got here, they discovered that there were Native American tribes living here, and there were 7 distinct tribes living in Ohio that we generally, from written record, know that they were 7 distinct different groups. There's the Ottawa, the Wyandot, Erie, Shawnee, Delaware, Mingo, and Seneca. The Seneca are part of the Iroquois Nation, which was a part of upstate New York and everything, and they had their own kind of what they called it, a League of Nations, and it was groups of Native American tribes that came together, organized, and made decisions like a democracy. And that's actually one of the founding fathers modeled a lot of our democracy for the American Constitution and a lot of our processes from the Iroquois. So it's kind of cool that some of our government practices came from some of the Native Americans that were already living here and had a democratic society. So that's something really cool if you want to look into it later. And also, you might recognize some of these names from places in Ohio. Like we have Delaware, Ohio. We also have the Delaware River. There's Shawnee State University, Shawnee State Forest, and State Park. So as you get to looking around, you'll notice that there's a lot of places around Ohio that still bear the names of Native American tribes. So next time you're driving by and you see a sign for some of these places, maybe Google and find out a little bit more about these cultures. All right, that's it for now, and I'll be rambling on with our next adventure soon.